can't believe it either. It's the middle of the week. How are you, Pete?
Good, thank you.
The Court of Public Opinion from the garage. I'm Jeremy Cordeux, and if you care to make a comment on any of the stuff that we cover, or maybe some things that you think we should cover, please feel free to do that, whether you're watching us on Facebook or hearing us on a podcast. Welcome. Before we get into some interesting bits and pieces, the day is the 29th. End of the month, or is that a bit to go? Yeah. 31st, yeah. Yes. The 29th. It's not a leap year or anything, is it? 1973. Oh, golly, yes. America's agony is over. The Vietnam War officially ends. US troops leave Vietnam. It was a particularly undignified exit. Do you remember some of those shots? I remember the day very clearly. March the 29th, 1973. I was reading news at Channel 10 in Sydney. And the footage that came in, of course it's a lot faster these days, but back then when we got the footage, we did the announcement. In fact, I kept the script. It's upstairs somewhere. I got it in a folder of things to remember. I kept the news script that I read, that the war had ended. It wasn't much more than a paragraph. And it was days later, of course, that we got those incredible pictures of the people scrambling, begging to get on helicopters and Hercules and other transport to get out of South Vietnam before the North arrived, because they weren't going to be too gentle. And those are pictures of the helicopters that would take off from the roof of the American embassy and go to waiting aircraft carriers in the South China Sea, I guess it would be. And then as soon as they had unloaded the people to make room for the next plane and the next and the next and the next, they just pushed the helicopters off the side of the aircraft carrier. Do you remember that? It's absolutely horrific stuff. But war is horrific, I'm afraid. I've never heard of a nice one. Captain Robert Falcon Scott, 1912, the year my mother was born. 1912, stormbound in a tent near the South Pole, makes his last entry in the diary, which reads, "The end cannot be far." British explorer, leader of the ill-fated South Pole expedition. He dies in Antarctica. He was only 43 years old. Captain Robert Falcon Scott. Movie star Jimmy Stewart is promoted to full colonel, one of the few Americans to rise from private to colonel in just 4 years. Well, it says private, but I don't know. Do they have privates in the Air Force?
Yeah.
I suppose they do. 1945 was the year, just at the end of the war. And speaking of the war, Nazi propaganda claims 99% of Germans voted for Nazi candidates. Well, of course they would, wouldn't they? They knew what was good for them. That was in 1936. John Major, British Prime Minister, Conservative from 1990 to 1997. He was born in Surrey. He replaced Margaret Thatcher as PM. 1943, he was born in 1943, yeah. Patty Duke, American Academy and Emmy Award-winning actress. The Miracle Worker, The Patty Duke Show, mental health advocate. She dies of sepsis from a ruptured intestine. She was just 69 years of age. That was in 2016. Elle Macpherson, the Australian supermodel and actress, lovely lady too. Elle Macpherson was born in 1964. Chinese farmers discover the terracotta warriors. Have you ever seen them? You seen them, Pete?
Yeah, I've seen photos, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the actual thing. Well, it's a big thing. It's a great big sort of trench filled with these incredibly preserved terracotta warriors or statues of them, buried to guard the tomb of the last Chinese emperor. That was in 1974 that they were discovered. John Spencer, Earl of Spencer, British peer and father of Diana, Princess of Wales. He dies at 68 in 1992. 1850, on this day, SS Royal Adelaide sinks in a storm. 200 people die. Eric Idle, the British comedian and actor. He was born in 1943. John Jacob Astor, 1848. He was born, the first multi-millionaire in the United States. Astor gained his fortune as a fur trader in the beginning. He built his empire out of Canada and in the United States. He dies at the age of 84. Oh, and Billy Thorpe, Australian musician. He was a nice guy. He was born 1946. He died in 2007. Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs. What was that song about? Most people I know think that I'm crazy. Yes. I think this is the only mention I'll make of the voice today, and probably this week. Well, I can't promise that. Words from the Prime Minister, not regarding the voice, but regarding those trans demonstrations. He said, Australia is a diverse population. We all deserve to be heard, and we should not seek to divide the nation in any way. Well, I pricked my ears up when I heard that, because I really think the voice is indeed an attempt to divide the nation, and in the worst possible way, between black and white. Prime Minister, I don't get your comment. Mind you, I agree with your comment. But if you believe that, you can't believe all this other stuff. TikTok. Now, I have to admit I know nothing about TikTok. It's been banned by the administrations of the United States and Canada and Great Britain. It's apparently, according to the United States Senate, a significant security risk. Well, there's no way, if Australia does not ban TikTok, that the Americans are going to go on dealing with us at a military level. So we can forget the submarine deal and just about every other aspect of the alliance, perhaps, depending on how seriously they take it. But I don't pretend to understand technology, but I have heard that TikTok is largely a way of kids, mostly just sending short videos to each other. And millions and millions and millions of people are tied up with this TikTok thing. How would the Chinese intelligence people have the time to sit down and go through all of that? Unless what they're saying is if you have TikTok on your phone, it can somehow worm its way into other aspects of your telephonic privacy or your notebook or your list of contacts and telephone numbers. I don't know, but the Americans and the Canadians and the Brits are serious about it. We don't seem to be quite so concerned in Canberra. The anti-discrimination stuff never ceases to amaze me and frustrate me. Anti-discrimination won't let you employ this person or that person, or you can't ask this question or that question. And yet I always heard, whoever paid the piper called the tune. But not according to this new, firmly, deeply held belief in anti-discrimination stuff. All sorts of rules and regulations about discrimination. I would have thought the very word would have been a problem. Discrimination. It is something you have to do to get the best people, isn't it? Choosing the best. In other words, it means discriminating against someone who, in your opinion, is not the best. You're looking at candidates and you are going to discriminate. Or is it that you just don't use the word? With all of this money about to be spent on defence, the Americans are very keen on applying the law to which we have signed up, which is very discriminatory. Did you know that? Very discriminatory. It controls where employees come from. These are people involved in defence or some aspect of the alliance. It controls where people come from, their background, their parents, their education, their friends, their connections. Some of the smartest people, of course, in various important fields to which I refer, obviously come from the Middle East and predominantly Asia, mostly China. The Americans have their rules, and it's a question of working within those rules, but what happens if we can't? We can't tell the Americans not to discriminate. I don't think that's going to get us very far. The second busiest day on record, Thursday of last week at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital here in Adelaide. A vote of no confidence in the Minister for Health, Chris Picton, a mess with the cochlear ear implants not being programmed properly at the Children's Hospital. It's a litany of disasters, but why doesn't somebody, instead of just a no confidence in the health minister sort of motion, why doesn't somebody look at why the hospitals are so busy and therefore so inefficient in the first place? They don't have linen, they don't have proper linen, and they don't have pillows apparently. People are told to fold up a towel or get your relatives to bring a pillow with you, or no, I don't know. Why does it have to make the 6 o'clock news before somebody notices this and somebody does something about it? Where are the checks and balances? No money for pillows and linen, but plenty of money in the system to pay for consultants, hundreds of them, earning millions, and of course the endless political or government advertising, which is nothing more than patting themselves on their back at our expense. World Athletic Chairman Sebastian Coe, Lord Sebastian Coe as he is these days, has announced that transsexual athletes will not be allowed to compete as women if they've gone through male puberty. Quite right, absolutely right and sensible. But wait for the screams. Oh, golly, wait for these screams. You can't discriminate. You must be inclusive. What, you must include cheats? Huh? Oh, I see. I don't know about you, but I am not gender confused. I don't want to be confused, period. But you can imagine coming down from outer space, which is the sort of litmus test that I use on a lot of things, and you have to try and explain to somebody from another planet what's going on. You know, be very difficult to explain stuff like this. Be very hard for anyone to accept it. But we somehow do for some strange reason. Oh, and listen, after 60 years of research, and of course use and abuse, they have discovered that most of the remedies that are used to relieve back pain are totally useless. You could have talked to anyone who's had a bad back and he or she will tell you. Simple as that. We're definitely headed for a 4-day working week. It's just around the corner. Same money. That's for 30 hours that you would get for 40. Same money. So instead of looking at productivity, which is really what we should be doing, we should be increasing our productivity as a way of increasing people's salaries. It doesn't, of course, provide the opportunity for people who have ambition. Ambition. People who don't watch the clock all the time. See, it's a wonderful way to put lesser people in the shade, and that is to have a few people who watch the clock around you, and other people, the management notice that you put in a lot more than you take out. It's a great way, particularly for young people, to get noticed and get ahead. I hope young people I know take advantage of that sort of advice. I always found it a very significant advantage. Just work harder. Work harder and you'll stand out. Channel 10 here in Adelaide are trying to arrest the negative comments about mass sackings and such like, and of course the rumours that are running around about the network being sold by the American owners. It's really pretty simple, really. The ratings, for example, in Adelaide are very bad. I can't tell you about Sydney and Melbourne, but I put that down to the endless promotion of programs in every commercial break, programs that don't rate and don't work, but they just promote the pants off them. And I've often said, you know, you can't promote your way out of trouble. You've got to have a first-class product worthy of promotion and then be sparing. Don't hit people over the head with your promotion. But that's not the real point here. We broadcast a news service for Channel 10, and having worked at Channel 10 in different days, different times, I can tell you there is nothing more important than the news. It is the building block of your entire prime-time evening viewing. You've got to get the news right. You've got to be a news leader. You can't broadcast the news here in Adelaide from Sydney and try to pretend that you're not. Expect us to think that you're involved in the community and all those good, warm, fuzzy things. You couldn't get away with that in America. You certainly couldn't get away with it in Sydney or Melbourne. You certainly wouldn't. Why would you imagine that you could get away with it in Adelaide? What is wrong with one of the biggest entertainment companies in the world, Paramount, CBS? What is wrong with maintaining a strong presence in our city? A strong presence is not 3 rooms on Green Hill Road. I'm sorry. That is really stupid, and it kind of gives you the feeling that they think we're stupid. You know, I can remember when Channel 10 had this wonderful building in Gilberton. I worked for them on several different projects and programs, and they were really very good, first class. I'd in fact go so far as to say better than Sydney. They took it more seriously than Sydney, and now it's disappeared. Why would you allow that to happen? Why would you allow it to happen? Just one more thought. They're arguing about the need for a massive upgrade to the CFS, Country Fire Service. And they do wonderful, wonderful work, those men and women. It's about equipment and precautions justifiably taken to look after these wonderful men and women who fight for our safety in an emergency. Now, the journalist who did the story, which I happened to see on Channel 10, must be too young. Can't remember. Too young. There's a thing called the Emergency Services Levy. Now, if you've got the miles on the clock or the years of experience under your belt, or however you want to put it, you will remember that after Ash Wednesday, that terrible day when a lot of the equipment of the CFS and others was found to be totally inadequate, substandard, they imposed the Emergency Services Levy. That is a levy on everyone's property. It's a huge money spinner for the government. And it was put in there to supply enough money to refurbish the equipment, and particularly the communications equipment, for our emergency services people. There is no argument, and there is no emergency. There can't be. The only excuse would be if the equipment is no longer fit for purpose. The money that goes into that emergency services levy is not being spent as it's meant to on emergency services. It probably just goes into the general revenue pile, and from there it gets allocated to who knows where. But this was a particularly focused levy for a particular purpose, and it was ongoing to make sure that the equipment was maintained at the highest level, most efficient level. Anyway, something to think about. I'm Jeremy Cordeux. Peter Clayton's with us. We'll be back tomorrow with more in the Court of Public Opinion. Believe in yourself, and thank you for viewing, or if you're listening as a podcast, thank you for listening. Bye for now.